Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the GREENIN Micro Network Plus Lunch and Learn webinar series. So if you haven't attended it earlier, so this is the webinar series, a part of the this network, which is led by the Global Center for Cleaner Research at the University of Surrey. So I have pleasure of leading it, and my name is Prashant Kumar. And this network is in collaboration with the UKCH, University of Oxford, University of Bath, University of York, and Cranfield University, and is funded by the EPSRC. So we have got this webinar series, which is running for a long time. This webinar usually happens every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month between 12:30 and 13:30. We are available on the LinkedIn and the Blue Sky, and on X you can see, and you can know a little bit more about the network and the project. Next, please. Can you move the next slide, please?
Yeah.
So this is basically the core team. So there are colleagues coming across these partner universities, as you can see, and they bring the diverse sort of expertise which is needed actually for this indoor greening sort of an area. So I'll not go in detail, but you can find more information about the individual team members on the GREENIN website. Next slide, please. So this, as I said, this webinar has been quite successful series. So we have over 100 speakers so far who have spoken. And the last one, we had colleagues from the Royal Horticulture Society, which is called RHS, and also from University of Liverpool. And these webinars are recorded, and they usually have, two speakers. So each of them is speaking around 15 to 20 minutes, and then we take the questions, in the end. And all these webinars are recorded, so you can find the recording on the YouTube. So there is a link there where you go, and all these, we can post the links into the chat box as well, so you can see the previous, the recordings if you're interested in any particular topic area there. Next slide, please. Before we say, I think there are quite a lot of activities going into the the GREENIN area, and just to promote some of the activities. So there's a survey which is out on the DIY survey on the household greening. So if you have a few minutes, you could potentially scan this barcode, or you can just go on to the GP4 Streets project, and you can possibly help us completing the survey. So this is more like a promotional activity for you. Just now, going back to the today's webinar, so we got two fantastic speakers. So the first one is Professor Avtar Matharu and Dr. Toby Carter. So I will introduce them one by one. So these speakers will talk about their work in this particular area. And what we're going to do is we will pass on the baton to the colleagues there today. And then in the meantime, I can just introduce them. So if you go to the next slide, please. Is there anything else?
That's
so
the final
let me introduce our first speaker. It's Professor Avtar Matharu. He comes from the University of York. He's well known for his work in the area, and he'll be talking today about bioboards and switchable adhesives. So yeah, over to you, Professor Matharu. Just to say that these webinars are recorded, and we'll ask you to use the Q&A chat box to write your name and the questions, and we'll pick up all these questions towards the end. And once both speakers have, talked about their work, and then we'll pick up those questions. I will read out these questions for them to respond. So yeah, without any further ado, over to you.
Good. Thank you, Prashant, and thank you, Sherwan. Delighted to be here, and congratulations on GREENIN. So I'm coming from a chemistry angle. I'm going to talk about bioboards and switchable adhesives. So on this first opening slide, as we're all aware, on the left-hand side, we only have one planet. In the middle, we do a lot of manufacturing. And for me, manufacturing means chemistry. It starts with chemistry, chemicals, materials, etc. And on the right-hand side is where ideally, if I had a vision, that is my vision on the right-hand side, where everything is done clean, green, sustainable, and we're living a wonderful life that's providing jobs for the local community. The atmosphere is clean, there's no pollution on land or in the rivers, and we're no longer using crude oil for our feedstock. We're using non-food biomass for our conversion. There's a chemical factory there that no one recognizes as a chemical factory, and we're in tune with the United Nations SDG. So I'm Professor of Green Chemistry, and often people ask me, what is green chemistry? And for me, it's really, really simple. Green chemistry is simply doing chemistry that's better for me, better for you, better for the environment, and better for the planet. And that's a really, really simple philosophy to describe what we do here at University of York. Okay, so just in a bit of context, but furthermore context, we've been living in a linear economy, take, make, use, and abuse. And we've been plundering Mother Earth for many years, over-reliance on crude oil, fossil reserves, fossil fuel-based feedstocks. We've been brilliant at manufacturing. A lot of the goods in our daily life are synthetic, and at end of life, we often they're disposed, they may be taken to a recycling centre. A lot of those end up in landfill or are now used for waste to energy. And we've got to move from that take, make, use and abuse economy, which is the linear economy, and move into a circular economy, which is in line with Sustainable Development Goal 12 of responsible consumption and production. And often it's doing more with less and thinking about waste or underutilized resource, underutilized feedstocks as a resource. That's my starting point in some of the work that we do here in the centre. And today I'm going to take you through 3 examples of where we have manufactured what I would call green materials, but I'm not sure whether they are fully sustainable materials. And I was having a chat with Toby, who's our next speaker, of how we sort of understand that gap from what I'm doing, which I claim to be green, but I also now want to make sure that what I'm doing is also sustainable in that sort of full life cycle understanding and analysis of the impact of the materials that we make. So the first example is where we've made bioboards, and these bioboards are from wheat straw. So the wood panelling industry in the UK is a massive industry. And you can see here in sort of cubic meters per year, you can see some of the volumes that go into the different types of wood panels and wood materials. And some of those we're familiar with. Particle board, okay, that's chipboard. Okay, that is the cheap and cheerful material that you can go to your hardware store. If I use B&Q as the example, you can buy chipboard or particle board. And often that particle board has a veneer on it as well, so it hides what's beneath it. MDF, which is a lot finer and denser. And then we have all sorts of paneling materials and insulating boards, and structural insulating panels is another area. And we know with SIPs, we know the sorts of challenges there, but also the opportunities. And often those opportunities have arisen because of a problem. And the big problem there was Grenfell, the Grenfell Tower, and the material that was used in the cavity, which was flammable, and changing that area. But in terms of why wheat straw, there's no shortage of straw in the UK. The UK generates around about 13 million tonnes of straw annually. Out of that 13 million tonnes of straw that the UK generates, there's approximately about 3 million tonnes which is from wheat straw. And of that 3 million tonnes of wheat straw, which you'll see now that a straw's been, now that wheat's been harvested, you will see in fields all around you. Some of that straw is used for animal bedding. Some of that straw is used for power stations, for burning, for renewable energy. Some of that straw is used for overwintering of carrots. Okay, and some of that straw is actually sent to northern France for their use. But nevertheless, there's still a surplus of straw. So this is where we started to provide an economic benefit to farmers who had lots and lots of what I would say low value material or low value resource. How could we upgrade the value of that material? So in terms of a particle board, in terms of wood paneling, what's the problem? Yeah, absolutely. We're using natural wood. Okay? And even though it could be Forest Stewardship Council certified wood, it's still using natural wood. When we make a particle board or a ply board or MDF, we've been using synthetic glues, urea, formaldehyde, phenol, formaldehyde, isocyanates. And all of those, we know if they're not cured properly, they lead to indoor air sickness. And Toby's going to talk more about that. So how do we move from these problems to something that's greener? So first of all, we can replace natural wood with wheat straw, okay, which is an underutilized resource. And it's not just wheat straw that we've used. We've used barley straw and other straws. How do we move away from urea, formaldehyde, phenol, formaldehyde? How do we move away from isocyanates? We actually use an aqueous silicate solution. And if we want to add extra strength to our wood panels that we make, or our bioboards, I should say, we can also add food waste. So again, there's a huge volume of unavoidable food waste that's present within the UK and globally. And within that unavoidable food waste, there are certain proteins that we can add to our aqueous silicate solution, which is our binder, which we then use to glue our straws together to make bioboards. And the bioboards that we make are equivalent. They're stronger than chipboard, okay, but not as strong as MDF. Okay, so they sit in that space between chipboard and MDF. So here's the overview. This was a DEFRA Link project that we carried out. We had partners on the left-hand side, which was Velcourt Farm and Management. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have gone there. You can see Jenny Dodson collecting straw. Jenny was the PhD student on this program. And we also had Ely Power Station, who were one of our partners, because as I said, a lot of straw goes for renewable energy. So at the top of this diagram of renewable power, Ely Power Station then have a problem in that they produce vast quantities of bottom ash, what we call bioash. We've taken their bioash and we've leached out soluble sodium and potassium silicates. That is our bioadhesive that we're using to glue our straw together. Now, if you take two pieces of straw, okay, nature is brilliant because nature coats all biomass with a hydrophobic coating. All biomass is encased with waxes and lipids. Otherwise, if those weren't present, we wouldn't have algae or seaweed in seas. If it rained, all the biomass would wash away. So if you think of what we're trying to do, we're trying to glue two pieces of wheat straw that have wax on the outside with water, because it's an aqueous adhesive that we're using. It's not going to happen. So what we do with our straw in the first instance is that we de-wax our straw. So we get hydrophobic coatings from that straw, and that's a valuable commodity. We offer that wax to cosmetic companies, and they use that in their cosmetics. So we've done a lot of work with L'Oreal, where they take our wheat straw wax in those opportunities. So once we've de-waxed the straw, then that straw is amenable to water or our aqueous silicate solution. If we want to strengthen the board, and now we're at the bottom of this diagram, the hardener chemistry, the biohardener, is where we can add different amounts of protein which comes from unavoidable food waste. So on the right-hand side, those are the bioboards that we make. And on the right-hand side of this project, the partner was B&Q. So we were making bioboards for B&Q's One Planet range 15 years ago. So this was almost like a concept project, like we have concept cars. We were sort of 15, 20 years ahead of our time in what we were doing. So that's example one. Example two is carpets. Most households have carpets. Most industries, places of work will have carpets. And I know there's a transition from carpets to wood flooring, and that's a challenge in its own right. But if you think of a carpet, and if you are at the moment sitting wherever you're sitting, and if your feet are rubbing on a carpet, okay, that is probably 100% crude oil without you realizing it. Okay. A carpet or a carpet tile, unless it's 100% wool, okay, it's typically 100% synthetic. So the face fiber is synthetic. Okay, the layers that bind the face fiber together are all synthetic. So it's just a bottle of oil that doesn't look like oil. It just performs a different function or purpose. So when your carpet comes to end of life, historically that carpet is out of sight, out of mind. Somebody takes it away unless you relay it in another room. And typically what used to happen, okay, that carpet would go to landfill. Okay. That no longer happens because carpets now, okay, go for waste to energy. And that makes sense because I've just said the carpet tile or the carpet that you're looking at is 100% synthetic. It's just a barrel of oil, and a barrel of oil has high calorific value. So there's a lot of energy recovery that goes there. So the project that we're involved with was to stop this process, this linear economy of making carpets and then sending them to landfill or waste to energy. And could we develop a switchable adhesive that allowed for recycling of carpets? So again, this was a multi-partner project. We're working with Interface Floor, and we developed a switchable adhesive, and the switchable adhesive was modified starch. So one of the companies we were working with was National Starch, who had a huge volume of what would be spent starch, or not many opportunities of what to do with this waste or spent starch. So we took their starch, we modified the starch, and we used that as our glue. So we replaced the traditional glue, which was non-recyclable, non-switchable, and we replaced it with our starch-based glue, which was switchable. And in terms of the switch, what's the trigger? The trigger is heat and humidity. So it's 130 degrees centigrade, 30% humidity, the glue starts to debond. And that temperature is really, really important, of being above 100 degrees centigrade to begin with, because if you've got a very expensive switchable carpet in your kitchen or bathroom, and for whatever happens, you spill boiling water, the last thing you want is that to start debonding. But also in terms of industrial carpet cleaning machines, you need to make sure that your carpet doesn't begin to debond if an industrial carpet cleaning machine has been over that. So we produced at large scale the switchable adhesive for commercial carpet tiles. So again, if you're at work and if your work area is carpeted, those are probably 60mm by 60mm square carpet tiles produced by Interface Floor. Okay, so we developed a fully switchable adhesive that once the layer switched, we were able to recycle the face layer and recycle the base layer and bring the two things together within circular economy. And the final what I want to talk about as something for colleagues to think about is the opportunity from waste paper. There's a huge myth that paper can be recycled up to 5, 6, 7 times. That's nonsense. Paper can only be recycled up to 2.5, 2.7 times That's what industry tells us, because the fibers get too short. And again, this is a PhD program with my student, who you'll see in a moment. I gave him the project. I says, we've got this waste paper. What can you do with it? He took the waste paper. We are skilled in microwave processing. We've got large-scale microwave processors in our laboratories. He took the paper, he put that in a microwave and converted the paper basically into a char, a solid residue, but more importantly, into a liquid fraction, what we call bio oil. He took that bio oil and he put 1 drop of that bio oil, okay, between 2 aluminium plates, 5 centimetre by 5 centimetre aluminium plates. So on the right-hand side of this slide, okay, we've got 2 plates held together by 1 drop of glue from waste paper, okay, and they've been cured and they're in the jaws of an Instron machine. And we tried to see what force was required to break the bond. And it came out to around about 1,500 newtons. And I said to my student, who's Neil, I said to Neil, how can you demonstrate that to the public? What does 1,500 newtons mean? You know, how can you demonstrate the impact of the glue that you've made? So this is Neil, okay, sitting there. And Neil doesn't mind me saying this, that he weighed 15 stone at the time this picture was taken. And this is Neil sitting there. And just here at the top is his 5 by 5 centimetre 2 aluminium plates held by a drop of glue. And Neil is now going to be lifted from the ground. It's going to be hoisted off the ground, and you'll see him sort of nervously smile and wave to you. And that's the proof of the pudding, as we say, is in the eating. But this is his PhD in a nutshell, from where he started to where he finished. So I'll just play this.
开始了，
开始了吗？
你别说话。
So I'm going to start lifting him off the ground.
一直在录，一直在录。
And he's just off the ground, and then he's going to swivel round nervously. And he'll wave at you. There we go. And that's Neil, who now is Professor of Chemistry at Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing. So on that note, just thank you for your attention. I've just given you a flavour of some of the things that we do, and I'll stop sharing there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Avtar. So if you have any questions for our speaker, can you please use the Q&A chat box? And then if you could kindly put your name and your question, so we'll pick that up after our next speaker. So our next speaker is Dr. Toby Carter. He's a research associate at the at the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of York. He completed his PhD at York in indoor air chemistry modeling under the supervision of his Professor Nicole Carslow. She's also the co-lead of the GREENIN network. And his current research focuses on how indoor air pollutants affects our lungs and asthma exacerbation with Dr. Helen Davies, and how climate change will affect indoor air quality in future with Professor Carslow. He's a member of the EU Coast Network, Net for Clean Air, where he provides expertise in germicidal, ultraviolet light, and the impact they have on indoor air quality. Thank you very much, Toby. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Prashant and Shurban, for allowing me to present today, and fantastic talk. Avtar, really enjoyed that. So yeah, I'm going to be talking to you all today on a review that we've been doing that's been funded by the GREENIN network, one of the 4 rapid review series. And I'm just going to give you an overview of what we've been looking at on the underlying mechanisms of plants and their respective impacts on indoor environmental quality. So we know already, as we've been to many previous seminars, that indoor greening infrastructure has been found to improve indoor environmental quality in certain aspects. And we know that IGI can also provide thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, and has energy benefits indoors. We also know that indoor pollutants, including particulate matter, ozone, and VOCs, among many others, have been found to be removed in plant-containing environments, which then results in an improvement of indoor air quality. We found that, well, we know that pollutant remediation mechanisms, but also environmental factors such as lighting and temperature, affect the level of air purifying capabilities of IGI, which is a current knowledge gap and therefore needs to be explored in a bit more detail. So this seminar just outlines an overview of one of the 4 rapid reviews, as I mentioned, funded by the GREENIN network, that synthesizes existing evidence across disciplines to identify key knowledge gaps, highlighting areas requiring further investigation and providing actionable research recommendations. So yeah, do watch out for the other 3 reviews that we published and disseminated soon. So this review will focus on the mechanisms by which plants affect indoor environmental quality, namely indoor air pollutants, mold, humidity, and temperature. So we're also going to explore whether there are any quote-unquote win-win scenarios. So for example, where indoor greening can improve indoor air quality, but also prevent mold, or whether improving one aspect of IEQ with indoor greening often leads to a deterioration in one of the other parameters. We're also going to explore how occupant activities in buildings and interactions with outdoor environment, so window opening or cooking and cleaning as an example, and how they influence the impact of indoor environmental quality. So the overarching aim of this review is purely to understand whether these indoor plants can provide the air purifying benefits that are claimed by the market, and if so, what sort of scale is required to realise these benefits and whether they are at all practical. So for example, if we add X amount of a certain plant into a room, how many and what size do we need to add to really provide a beneficial but albeit practical improvement to indoor air quality? So as part of our review methodology, extensive article databases, including Web of Science, Scopus, and PubMed were evaluated using these given terms as shown on the screen. So we said that a paper had to include either indoor air quality or environmental pollution or pollutant, and then an IEQ parameter, so VOC or formaldehyde, and a type of IGI and a type of mechanism. So the asterisk just on the screen here just denotes the word truncation for the database search. So the total number of papers that came back was 411, which were then screened based on title and abstract using the existing Prisma method. Papers which were removed from the extraction processes based on abstract and title if they were not relevant, or they were conference articles, or they were dated outside our scope, which was outside of January 2000 to February 2026. So following the first round of reviews and based on the reviewed literature, authors were then invited to suggest papers which hadn't been included in the initial review, but were relevant to the scope of the study. So this added around 90 research articles to the total. So following the second round of reviews, papers noted to be irrelevant after further examination were then excluded. So in total, we had 221 papers, of which 188 were research papers and 33 were review papers. So the papers that were deemed irrelevant were removed for not being in English, didn't study indoor green infrastructure, were purely theoretical, were based on the outdoor environment, were of poor quality, or had unconvincing or vague scientific rigour. So what we found was the distribution for the year versus the number of papers published was determined, as well as the cumulative frequency of the total papers. We found that the top 5 publishing journals for papers sourced in this review were Environmental Science and Pollution Research, so that accounted for 20 papers. Building and Environment was 18, Air Quality, Atmosphere and Health was 13. We found that Water, Air and Soil Pollution had 9 papers and Chemisphere had 8 papers. So we noticed that the popularity of this particular topic started to really increase from 2017, where at least 12 relevant papers were published per full year, which focus on IGI as a mechanism of affecting IAQ. So before 2017, only 2011 had published more than 10 papers published in 1 year, which just shows how important it is that we find new sustainable and workable solutions to improving indoor air quality. So the research articles identified focused on a wide range of indoor air quality parameters, spanning from typical indoor air pollutants, such as VOCs and particulate matter, to more thermal comfort metrics, including temperature and relative humidity. So we found that the most researched parameter was VOCs, which looked at in 85 papers, followed by formaldehyde and carbon dioxide. So clearly, there's been a recent focus on how IGI really affects indoor air pollutant concentrations, but less of the focus has been on the microbial side of indoor air quality, while bioaerosols and mold were only looked at in 5 and 6 papers, respectively, per our search terms. Other areas of interest that were not included in the original search term list were also identified. So light intensity and ventilation were actually areas of focus in some of these papers too. And the literature review also identified other indoor pollutants of interest, such as sulfur dioxide, ammonia, and toluene. We found that the most popular type of IGI research was potted plants, which made up about 2/3, 66% of the total research papers reviewed. Active green walls and active living walls researched in 33 papers, whereas botanical filters and bioscrubbers were found in 17 papers. And other types of IGI identified were hydroponics, which is becoming more and more of a viable kind of solution indoors recently, activated carbon pots, and substrate growing systems. Just note that some of the papers identified obviously researched more than one IGI in a study, for example, if it was a comparison paper. So as I mentioned, one of the primary aims of this review is to determine the scientific mechanisms into how and why certain indoor greening infrastructure affects certain indoor air pollutants. So the most identified mechanism was uptake with 110 papers, and then it was absorption with 91 and adsorption with 65. Which the uptake and the absorption papers, or the number of those, roughly correlate to the number of papers which feature VOCs. So there's that kind of pollutant and process having a direct link there. There was a wide range of mechanisms identified for IGIs affecting indoor air quality, with 22 mechanisms, yet only 10 papers actually identified plants as a route, 2 temperature cooling, and just 2 papers identified IGIs as a method for dehumidification. So how do these plant mechanisms actually affect indoor air quality? I'm just going to go over a few examples. There are many more mechanisms, but I'm just going to go over a few. So we found that CO2 is absorbed through the stomata and fixed into the plant biomass. This removal is enhanced under more intense light levels as plant stomata is more efficient. We found that passive potted plants actively contributed to particulate matter removal through leaf surface deposition and adsorption. And we also found that rhizospheric microorganisms associated with indoor plants have been shown to contribute to microbial degradation of toluene, which they can then use as an energy source, though this process even can also lead to CO2 formation. VOCs can be reduced through biofiltration, likely involving the plant growth media, moisture-retaining substrates, and rhizospheric related processes. But one negative associated with some of these studies is that pollutant removal via IGI can also lead to the production of fungal spores, such as during irrigation cycles, which then encourages mold growth if that becomes unmanaged. Plants have also been demonstrated to incorporate nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, directly through the leaves and then assimilate the nitrogen through the underlying metabolism, which effectively just removes it from the surrounding air. We know that cooling happens via evapotranspiration, which improves thermal comfort in some of the studies, yet although we found that it can also increase indoor humidity. We found that stomata absorption and subsequent phytodegradation reduces airborne formaldehyde by drawing it into the plant tissue, where it's either metabolized into organic compounds or simply converted into CO2. We also know that varying environmental factors even, can also play a key role in indoor green infrastructure and their respective ability to efficiently remove pollutants from the indoor environment and improve indoor air quality. So, for example, adequate lighting significantly enhances the phytoremediation capacity of living walls, where optimal lighting then led to increased CO2 removal. We found that spider plant and devil's ivy absorbed CO2, but spider plant showed a higher uptake, yet uptake within species varies, so green-white variants performed similarly to or better than fully green variants. We found that leaf surface deposition and stomatal uptake reduced suspended TSP, or total suspended particles, PM2.5 and PM10, in passive potted indoor plants. And we also noticed that leaves with densely arranged grooves and ridges showed more PM accumulation. We found that biofiltration system performance readily depends on airflow rate and contact time, highlighting that biofilter design and operation are truly critical for achieving effective indoor air cleaning. We found that within the species Zamioculcas zammifolia, which is a potted ornamental houseplant, uptake varies by pollutant, but also plant condition, where benzene was taken up much faster than toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. We found that vertical indoor walls are found to produce a cooling effect near the wall canopy, though this effect is much less noticeable further away from the wall itself. As I mentioned, evapotranspiration increases relative humidity in indoor plants, and this higher relative humidity promotes hygroscopic wetting of the plant. Pollutant levels can also be influenced by natural ventilation, window opening, as well as cooking and cleaning, which reduce the effectiveness of IGI pollutant removal. So those are just some of the examples of how factors can influence removal efficiency of indoor air pollutants. So from this review, we found some trade-offs and mutually beneficial wins for IGI on indoor air quality. So, for example, green walls remove PM2.5 and ozone, but it also causes a significant increase in humidity and dew point. An increase in relative humidity, though, was suggested to actually improve formaldehyde removal. So this increased moisture actually benefited indoor air quality performance rather than damaging it. In another study, we found that potted plants lowered PM2.5 levels and subsequently improved IAQ. The relative humidity did reach levels of 90 to 100%, which led to significant mold, microbial and fungal concentration. We also found that often frequent exposure to high concentrations of pollutants led to the deterioration of plant health, and a plant's removal capacity for the pollutant benzene is found to be positively related to the transpiration rate of the plant. And this exposure to benzene was shown to sharply decrease the transpiration rate and affect plant health under increased exposure. And finally, despite the high removal efficiency of active green walls for indoor air pollutants, they often require a lot of energy and the constant replenishment of plants and filters. So what are the future directions and limitations uncovered by this review? So we found that the majority of studies took place analysing one single plant in a small glass chamber exposed to an unrealistic concentration of pollutant, so often in the ppm range. Therefore, current test chamber designs are of limited suitability for really accurately quantifying plant-mediated VOC removal. So we suggest standardized guidelines under these realistic indoor conditions are called for in such experiments. We found that individual indoor plants may remove small amounts of formaldehyde, but it's not an efficient nor practical solution because too many plants would be required for a meaningful improvement in air quality. A bonus, though, we found that hydroculture may be a viable alternative to the potting mix systems, but there's a real need to follow up some of these chamber experiments with studies that take place in real indoor spaces. And there also needs to be more research done into the microbial and bioaerosol effects from IGI affecting indoor air quality. So just to wrap up this presentation, as I say, there's been plenty of research on how different IGI in potted plants can improve indoor air quality. And the majority of these studies, though, have been performed in small chambers and with often unrealistic indoor pollutant concentrations. There's now a real requirement to perform these experiments, focusing on pollutant removal through IGI in real-world situations and environments. There's also a need for more longer-term sustained experiments to really understand how plant health is affected by pollutant concentrations. So, as I mentioned, there's plenty of studies which expose a plant to unrealistic concentrations of VOCs, of which the concentrations are hundreds, if yet thousands of times higher than those that are actually commonly observed indoors. So we really need to understand whether we achieve a saturation effect at a certain pollutant concentration, or whether it just culminates in the death of the plant itself. So therefore, the more we understand the chemistry initiated by indoor greening infrastructure, the better we can overall judge when and where the benefits of air purification are substantially larger than increased upkeep, energy use, and production of other pollutants. So I just want to say thank you very much to Professor Prashant Kumar and the GREENIN network for funding this rapid review. Thank you very much to all the contributors in the paper review process who are all on screen. We're currently, Nick and I, writing the manuscript up, so we're hoping to submit for peer review soon. Thank you very much for listening. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toby. This has been fantastic, 2 presentations. So there has been some questions actually for you. So if you can unshare your slides. So the first of the question is from Tom Childs, and this is for Professor Avtar. They're asking, is there any option for bioboard to replace plastic board, i.e., if you could create some kind of technically designed cob wall panels?
Yes, no, yes, there is an opportunity. So we've certainly combined our straws with clay materials. Okay, so there's nothing new there. I think the opportunity is there. There are materials such as hempcrete that have been used also for plasterboard material. So yes, the opportunity is there, and the solution is actually looking back in history and the materials that we used then. So the answer is yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So there's another question from Nick for you. What are the implications for food security of using agricultural straws for bio-based products? Noting news this morning that yields of cereals very low this year, or is it the waste part that would not use for food?
Yeah, so the straw is the waste part. That's the residue. So the wheat is harvested. 2/3 of the wheat that's grown, the top 2/3 is what's harvested, and often it's the straw that's left behind on the field. So that is the underutilized portion. So we're not impacting food security. So it is essentially, if you want to call it the waste, it is the waste product that we use. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so can I ask our attendees to please write your questions using the Q&A box you have for our speakers today. So maybe I can ask a question for Toby. So Toby, when you say that there are different mechanisms actually, which is basically removing the pollution by the plants.
Yeah.
And I believe that the deposition seems to be the most sort of prominent in there, right?
Yeah.
Did they mention somehow which one is basically the most effective in terms of the pollution removal? With adsorption and absorption are basically more relevant to the gases, I believe. And given the quantity of the plants, which is not a lot usually in the indoor environments, might not make a huge difference. Does the literature give any quantitative evidence of any of them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we looked over 200 papers, and it was quite tricky to really compare quantitatively between kind of removal. So as I mentioned, some studies put 1,000 ppm of benzene, for example, which we'd maybe find a couple of ppb indoors, really. So really blasting these plants with benzene, which found to maybe remove 500 ppm of benzene, but that might not be relevant indoors. And as you mentioned, the amount of different species of plant that were actually studied, I think we found, of the 200 papers, I think we found about 150 different species. So it was really, really tricky to really compare removal efficiencies. Obviously, some removed, or some had a better removal efficiency than others. It also depends on the pollutant. So, for example, as I mentioned, some of the BTEX compounds, such as your benzene, your toluene, your ethyl benzene, maybe weren't as effective going through active green walls than it would be particulate matter, for example. So hopefully this review can just give a bit of an overview of those mechanisms, and you can then attribute which mechanism to which plant, to which pollutant you really want to see removed, and really categorically say, right, we want to improve our CO2 concentrations in this room. Therefore, we need to use laurel trees, for example, with a lot of lighting to uptake that CO2. So it really just depends on what the user wants, really.
Perfect. Yeah. I've got a couple of more questions which has come through. So there is one is, do you have any idea of using the straw derived material into a thin layer, which can be ultimately replace the existing fossil fuel based food package materials? This question comes from Santhana Lakshmi, and this is for Professor Avtar, for you.
Yes, so the applications, I mean, I've just given you one example of the Bioboard, and you can make the Bioboard as thin or as thick as you want, and as hard or as flexible as you want. So again, we've explored lots and lots of different applications for the material. So the answer there is yes. And if I can also go back to Tom Childs, one of the things that we did do, and whether this also adds to my previous answer, we actually made structural insulation panels completely made from wheat straw. So the two outer layers were Bioboards, and the inner foam, okay, was a foam that had wheat straw fibers in it. So it was 100% renewably resourced. If I may just answer Zhao's question as well.
Yes, please.
Again,
Yeah, go ahead.
on Bioboards and using food adhesives and impacts on. So I'm just going to hold this up. Okay. This is what we made 16 years ago in the lab. There's no mold on it. Okay. There's no visible deterioration or degradation. That's a hole there because that's where the hinge would fit, the door hinge. We managed to profile it. We managed to router it. And this was the lab piece. This was the production piece that we made. This is 15 years ago. And again, in terms of the durability, this was made to P3 standard. So P3 standard is for indoor use as either in the bathroom, okay, or in the kitchen. So swelling is no greater than 14% in a humid environment. So we've passed all of those tests as well. So this is highly, highly durable. And also, this is fireproof. And if you think back to the construction of this, the wood fibers through using silicate chemistry. Silicate is glass. So we've encased wood fibers where we've removed the hydrophobic coating. So we've removed some of the flammable aspects of the fibers, and then we've encased those fibers in glass. So you can actually take a blowtorch to this and it won't catch fire. This will just char. So that's another way of looking at the proposition of this. So Zhao, I hope that answers your question. And Tom, I hope I've added to your question as well.
Thank you. We got 2 more questions for Toby. So the first one is, based on the review, what claims about air purifying plants should manufacturers be permitted to make? And what evidence should be required to support these claims?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. So I suppose in most of the cases from the review, the majority of these plants are air purifying. So, for example, we put them in these chambers or in buildings, often a lot in classrooms and offices, and they do remove gas-phase pollutants. But so they can be technically classed as air purifying plants. But whether that pollutant removal has any kind of appreciable difference on indoor air quality and respective health impacts, I think there needs to be a lot more work to do in that. In terms of the markets and the manufacturers, I think it's more a question for kind of regulation, I guess, or more of a question for regulators, I guess. As scientists, we do the research and we do the review to kind of give information to markets and these regulation experts to kind of give this information, say, right, at what point or at what saturation effect does these potted plants, at what concentrations actually have an appreciable impact on indoor air quality. So I think there needs to be a lot more kind of work done in that setting.
Perfect. There's also another question, which is, how can we translate pollutant removal rates measured in small chambers into realistic performance in occupied buildings with ventilation, open windows, and changing pollutant sources?
Yeah, so another good question. I'm just going to plug the interiors facility at the University of York that's completely brand new. So it's a state-of-the-art indoor air quality testing house. So that is a perfect example of how we can translate these small kind of chambers into more realistic performance, where you can have occupancy, you can have people doing cooking and cleaning. There has been real world kind of house field campaigns before over in America with Home Chem and the CASA campaign. Granted, they didn't look at any impacts from plants, but especially with CASA, they looked at wildfires, for example. But there are now more and more opportunities to look at this, or even in just a generic office. There was a couple of studies that added a few plants, and there was a fantastic paper. I can't remember the authors, but they were looking to reduce the level of CO2 in a museum to stop or to kind of prevent a painting from becoming damaged from high CO2 levels. So they introduced some plants into the room, which reduced CO2 levels. So I think there's quite niche ways that you can actually translate into real world scenarios. There just needs to be more studies of them, really.
Perfect. Got a couple of more questions coming in. So this is really interesting and encouraging to see, a lot of interest from our attendees today. So one of the question is, it's not really a question, it's more like a curiosity driven, the ask, where they're saying, oh, did you hear about this book? This is called How to Grow Fresh Air, 50 Houseplants That Purify Your Home or Office. They have ranked the plants and their strength in cleaning the air. Would like to hear your thoughts on it. I think it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I've not heard of that, but
It will be interesting to see, I guess, at some point.
Yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely. I can't comment
I
on
was
that.
quite amazed to see as well, because we have been involved in the in this review, and then we just concluded another review on monitoring and modeling. There are hardly many studies actually that can allow you to do the ranking based on the thing. So whether it's just more like a perspective of the authors, or there is evidence based to rank it. So might be interesting to have a look at this book and see what has been proposed, and yeah, that'd be really interesting. There's another question which comes from Jacqueline Belcher, and she asked, thanks to you to both the speakers. This question concerns the rapid review. In the review, was there any information on plants removing or increasing the presence of harmful microscopic organisms indoors? For example, organisms causing skin allergies. Noted that some plants may increase mold, which may affect those with respiratory illness. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. There was not directly, because the review was based solely on the chemistry. I'm not a health expert, nor do I claim to be. So it was more just focusing on whether there was any production of mold rather than the impacts on health. But it's a very important point that needs to be more research done.
Yeah, but I could add actually more that there are 4 rapid reviews we have been doing as part of GREENIN. So the first one was around monitoring and modeling that myself and our team was leading. The other one is around the air quality benefits, which Toby and Nick has been leading. There's been third one, which is talking about the health and well-being. So this is where I think this topic will be covered, which has been asked there. And the fourth one is optimization and strategy. So there are 4 reviews. So keep an eye on them. There will be some interesting information coming out. I don't have any further questions from the from our audience, unless I missed anything. So maybe we could potentially say thanks to both our speakers for their time and providing a very valuable insight into a very important topic. So thank you very much, both of you, for the fantastic presentations. And I can take the opportunity to introduce to our speakers for the next webinar. And that's going to be same day, same time on 2nd of September. So we got Dr. Nelger Viana, and she is from Brazil. And they will be talking about the healthy indoor environments in schools and healthcare settings. And we got another young researcher, early career researcher, I should say, a PhD candidate at UCL, Heng-Chuing Wei, and he will be talking about the biointegrated approaches for healthier indoor environments. So just to also mention, the Heng-Chuing Wei is also the GREENIN. He won the GREENIN Fellowship, so he's a GREENIN fellow, and he's been working on some interesting work around this topic area. So we'll welcome you to join back on 2nd of September. Make the note in the diary. The webinar is recorded, and you will receive a notification with the link. So in case if you are interested to rewatch some of the parts or wanted to share with your colleagues or in your network, so please feel free to do that. So you'll hear from us. And if you're not really the member of the GREENIN network, so we will really we'll request you to become a member. It's free. So if you go onto the GREENIN webpage, on the top right-hand side, you will see join us. And there's a little form you complete, and then you'll start getting the notification of all the activities and the opportunities. There's also a barcode here if you wanted to scan. Otherwise, you can go onto the page and you can do that. I would also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and Blue Sky and X. So this is where you see GREENIN Micro Network. You could then see the latest updates from the network. There are several other activities going on. Very interesting work done by the team and the colleagues. So yeah, if you want to remain up to date, please do follow us. So thank you very much again, everybody, for their time. And I should also thank our team, especially Sarvan and Helen and Kanika, to help in the background for helping managing these webinars. Thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.